2018 webinar series, Obtaining a Community College Job with Sean Simpson, and this presentation is sponsored by the Division and Departmental Issues Committee of AMATIC. And AMATIC is the American Mathematical Association of Two-Year Colleges, and our core value is building expertise and exhibiting leadership in the teaching and learning of mathematics, enhancing personal growth, and improving teaching methods and effectiveness as a personally initiated lifelong responsibility. And more information can be found at our website, amatic.org. And also, please note that the views expressed by the presenter are not necessarily the views of AMATIC, and commercial products mentioned by presenters are not endorsed by AMATIC. And now we're going to switch to the presenter slides. So if you could please give me a moment to do that. And if you would like to welcome Sean in the chat room while you're waiting for me to switch to his slides, that would be great. So as soon as the slide, I'm going to turn it over to Sean. And here you go, Sean. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you, John, and thank you everybody for joining us this afternoon for this talk on obtaining a community college job. I am chair of the Division and Department Issues Committee of AMATIC. That's why I'm participating in this today, and I'm also a professor of mathematics at Westchester Community College in New York, where we are not having a snow day today, which is very nice, although we are anticipating yet another one on Thursday. Before I get into all the important parts, a couple of credits need to be shared. First, Kate Kozak, who is the Southwest Vice President for AMATIC, she was really the one who kind of got this on our radar screen as something that we should be doing. She has given a seminar similar to this at Northern Arizona University for many, many years. Mine will be a lot more generic than hers with a couple of other added features. And I also need to thank the Chairs Subcommittee from DDIC at the most recent conference that we had out in Anaheim. They were very helpful helping me put together this PowerPoint itself for you. All right, so who is this webinar actually geared for? Well, first, our purpose is to help give tips on obtaining a full-time community college teaching job. If you're looking for jobs at a four-year school or in a research institution, okay, this isn't for you. This really is supposed to be for those who are trying to get a community college teaching job. And again, I want to emphasize the teaching part, so not a community college administrator job. And so we're going to go through a general job search process, recognizing that every school does things a little bit differently. Everybody's got their own little stink on it, but there are certain general things that are going to be applied or can be applied to any search here. All right, so first step is, well, where are these job openings anyway? There are a number of different places you can go. I mentioned the AMATIC website first. A number of our colleges are AMATIC institutional members, and as such, they are allowed to put up job descriptions on their websites. But also the AMATIC affiliates have websites as well that sometimes have job openings listed. I know for my case, I'm in New York. NISMATIC happens to host a similar sort of feature on its website. HigherEdJobs.com often has job listings, as does MathJobs.org. We hired a couple of people that started in September of last year, and one of them specifically said that he found our job by going to mathjobs.org. The Chronicle of Higher Education also works sometimes. They're great for more administrator than for community college positions, but it's a place to look. And then finally, every individual college website will post their own jobs. I should mention that when I got the job here at Westchester Community College, I happened to do personally a search of all the community colleges in New York. I wanted to be in New York. And looked at each individual one and found where the jobs were that year. Westchester happened to be one of them, and I'm thrilled they hired me. So that's the first part, is figuring out where the job is anyway. Next comes the cover letter. The cover letter, I can't emphasize just how important it is, because it is the first thing that the search committee is going to see. It's the first thing that we're going to read, and we're going to see it even before we get to your resume. I want to emphasize that you really need to follow the directions. Amongst that is, show that you actually know something about the school. So I have experience now serving on search and screens for math positions here at WCC, probably 6 or 7 of them at this point, even though I've only been here 12 years. And it is stunning to see the sort of things that people put in that indicate they know nothing about the school. For instance, I'm at Westchester Community College. There is also a Westchester University. Some people have made reference to facts that are true about Westchester University, which is in a different state, than Westchester Community College. So show that you actually know something about the correct school, that you're paying attention, and you're not just sending out a letter to every single place that exists. So that goes along with customizing the letter and the resume. If a letter wants, an ad talks about in online components, well, talk about that in your letter. Talk about things that sort of customize now what it is about this particular job that you're applying for. Because after all, when we go ahead and get 100 resumes, we have to have, we really do look for the ones where, oh, this person actually took the time and cares a little bit more about us. And you might want to demonstrate a number of different things in your letter. Demonstrate that you are aware of what's going on in math education. Demonstrate some knowledge of technology, perhaps, or alternate forms of instruction, and that you've worked with or that you know some of these things. Certainly you won't be able to demonstrate everything in a cover letter, but at least, give some idea that yes, you're not just someone who thinks that teaching is go in front of a chalkboard and talk at students. Demonstrate that you actually do know some of these extra things. All right, so that's the first. So step 2 really is that cover letter and application. Then, go through this. The interview is probably the next process. Now, sometimes these interviews are done at a distance. Sometimes they are done face-to-face. It'll all depend upon the school, where the applicant is coming from, and whether the school has money. Certainly, if you are a distance candidate, you might want to consider asking, hey, is there some funding to help me get to the school if the interview has to be done in person? I know that in our case, we do not provide that, but we are at least willing to do an interview via phone. So yeah, there are a couple of ways this can be done. And the questions, I'm sure many of you could guess what many of the questions are going to be about. There's going to be a question about your general knowledge of the community college. This sort of helps weed out the, oh, you're applying for a community college job because it's a job, not because you want to be at a community college. So there's typically a question on that. There'll end up being questions on pedagogical knowledge, mathematical knowledge, even pedagogical content. It depends on the school. Some schools will actually include a math question in the middle of the interview. I remember when I encountered that the first time, and I won't say at what school it was, it sort of threw me for a bit of a loop. Now, I was able to answer the question. It wasn't that hard, but sort of one of those, I'm being asked a math question here. That was a little bit strange. In addition, why do you want to work at this school? Is there a reason why you would care to obtain a job at this particular college as opposed to other colleges? So yes, I see this sound thing. I'm going to put my microphone a little bit closer to me. In the questions, there'll probably be something that indicates, do you have some familiarity with the school? Not do you know every last detail, right? It's not every last detail, but do you know something about what it is about the school? For instance, do you know the rough size of the department? Is the department a department of 2? Is it a department of 12? Is it a department of 40? Having some general sense about the school and the college is important. You'll also be asked questions about classroom scenarios in general. How do you handle a problem student, for instance, or perhaps a scenario with how would you try to get this point across to a student in a different way? And then there's always going to be that question about diversity nowadays, your experience with diversity. And diversity can take on a number of different forms depending upon the school. That may be ethnic and racial, which admittedly is the most popular portion that they're looking for here, but also diversity in terms of age, diversity in terms of learning styles, diversity in terms of learning methods, online versus being in person or hybrid. There's diversity in those sorts of things as well. All right, so after the interview, then you are typically given an opportunity to ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask a couple of questions. Now, you might want to be cognizant of how much time you have. Hopefully, at the beginning of the interview, they will say, we have about 30 minutes to talk to you today, or something along those lines, so that if you look down at your watch and you realize that 29 minutes have already gone by, that they don't really have much time because there's another interview coming in. Or that your interview's over in 20 minutes, hey, I might actually have an extra couple of minutes to go through and ask a couple of more questions. You have no idea how annoyed committees can get sometimes if they tell you, we have 30 minutes to discuss today, and 30 minutes has gone by, and you're only on question 3 or question 4, and there's 7 more to go. That puts you down the list real quick. Okay. Many schools will also expect you to have a teaching demonstration. This may occur at the same time as your interview, or it may be at a different time. That will depend. That depends upon, of course, the school. It'll also depend upon, again, whether you're a distance candidate or not. And the funny part is that these teaching demonstrations are sometimes in front of a live class, and sometimes in front of only the search committee. And how that gets handled is so radically different. I know at Westchester Community College, we have made a specific effort to have our teaching demonstrations be in front of a class, see how they react to a class. However, I have been through interviews myself where my teaching demonstration was in front of the search committee. And that can be a little bit frustrating sometimes because you're waiting for the question, except everyone in the room is a math professor, and you're solving a linear equation, and of course they know how to do that. But that I think ends up being a little bit harder. But you will end up having to do a demonstration because, after all, this is a teaching job you're after. One thing to keep in mind, though, is don't try to do too much. Yes, you might know all these wonderful little gadgets and all these wonderful little technology things that you can work out. Don't try to force everything in. Put in things that are appropriate. It's lovely that you know how to code in Excel, but if you're teaching the students how to solve a linear equation, breaking out an Excel file might not be the most appropriate. On the other hand, if you're being asked to do a teaching demonstration and it's a statistics class where you're doing regression, maybe then it is appropriate to do so. But don't try to force things in to show that you know everything. It's one of those, fit things in that are natural. Really do act like it's your own class. That way it seems much more natural, and the committee will have a much better sense as to who you are as a teacher. And then there's the administration. The administration is typically the last person or group, that'll vary depending on the school, to meet with you before a job is offered, and often they're the ones who actually make the hiring decision. Now, how that gets done does vary from school to school. I happen to be in one of those odd cases where the president of my school hires every single person. He has just retired after 42 years of service to Westchester as the president, so that means he has hired virtually every single faculty member on the campus, all 170 of us. On the other hand, sometimes that decision is left to an academic vice president or a provost, but somewhere the administration will get involved, and yes, they are the ones who ultimately make the decision. It may be that the department has said, here's 3 finalists, and now you're one of those 3. What sort of things should you ask about? So there is going to be a place where you're going to ask questions. It may be at the interview level, it may be at the administration level, or for that matter, at both levels. What sort of things might you want to ask about? Well, one thing that I think is important is to ask a bit about the campus character. Everybody and every school is different, and you should probably try to see if you can fit in a reasonable way. So asking about the character of the school, I think, shows something very good in trying to obtain the job, because it's saying that, hey, I want to know whether this is the right place for me, not just am I the right person for you. What do you mean by fit in? I see what your question is saying. So some schools are very, very into, even though it might be community college related, some schools are still, you need to have a PhD and you need to do some research. For instance, while I am part of SUNY, the CUNY schools do require all of their tenured faculty to have doctorate degrees. Is that that's a characteristic of all of the CUNY schools? Would you fit into that or not? Is it a small school where everybody goes and hangs out on Friday after classes and goes and has an alcoholic beverage or 2? Or is it hey, we're a very separated group that everybody kind of does their own thing because the school is too large or the school is too urban in nature? That's what I mean. Let's see here. Departmental expectations. What are the expectations? Yes, you have to teach. We all know that we have to teach. But are there other duties? Is it service to the school that's important? Is it service to professional organizations that's important? Is it research that's important? And each school will answer that a little bit differently. So at my school, research is a minor role at most. At other schools, it's a much, much more important thing. I see Barbara throwing in something about the tenure process. So yes, tenure process. Is the tenure process a cutthroat process at an individual school? That gets into the character. Some schools, it's a competition. And some schools, it's all individual, that your ability to get tenure is independent of everyone else teaching at the time. And then the classroom environment. What is the classroom really like? What are the students really like? Urban settings, suburban settings, rural settings, they're all wildly different. Even though I am in what is often considered to be a suburban setting, I consider my school to be rather urban in nature, if only from the perspective of how our students are. We have so many ELI, English Learning Institute students, where English is not their first language. Whereas in more rural settings, that may not be the case. That's an important thing to know about before you get to the school. Not saying that something is bad or good, it's just at least something to be aware of, and it shows that you're showing interest in the school itself by asking questions of that sort. What else? Typically, you will be asked about recommendations. Are you asked for recommendation letters or are you asked for recommendation names? I mentioned in the initial setup here that your cover letter, you should follow the directions. This is part of that, following the directions, making sure if they ask for names, provide names. If they ask for letters, have letters be provided. Transcripts as well. Are transcripts necessary? And more, I guess, to that point, when are they necessary? And can you get away with unofficial transcripts, at least initially? Or do you need official transcripts even at the starting process? This is especially important because I can tell you, in going through over 6 or 7 searches and reading through somewhere on the order of 800 resumes through all of them, there are a number of people who say they are qualified for the job, and you know that they're not. They have a master's degree in accounting. That's lovely. The highest math course you ever took was calculus for business. Thanks for playing. Or perhaps somebody's got a PhD in physics. That's great. Many schools want to put that emphasis on the math, and so they want to see a transcript. Oh, while they may have a degree in math education, they really do have a substantial math background because degrees do in fact vary. That pretty much is going to sum up my what I have then. So I want to thank everybody for coming and participating within the seminar. And we do have some time for some questions. If you do want to get in touch with me, my email address is listed there. That's sean.simpson@sunywcc.edu. And John, I'm not sure quite how you want to handle if there are questions for the next few minutes or so.
Well, let's thank Sean again in the chat room, everyone. And if you do have any questions for Sean, just let's give him a few minutes more to take your questions. I guess there was actually a question for me. In terms of engineering counting as a related field at my school, it does not count as a related field because our college is very strict on the degrees have to be labeled as math and not as engineering or statistics or physics. So we have to be very strict at my college. I'm sure that Sean can reiterate that different colleges have different expectations of what degrees and majors would be applicable to a math job.
Yes, John, you're right. Engineering at my school and at most schools is not considered a related field, but math education typically will be. I'm surprised you said statistics is not. As one who has a statistics degree, I consider statistics to be a related field. I also it's okay. And then,
well, right. My degree is in statistics also.
So yeah, statistics education, and all of that. There was a follow-up question there on, okay, are there any statistics to show some of these points? It isn't based on my own personal experience. It's based on my personal experience, and then the chairs of the members of the chair subcommittee within AMATIC who have all, and first of all, they've all been hired, and also they are often involved a great deal with the actual hiring process itself of future folks. Lisa has a question. What level of math questions were you asked during one of your interviews? I was actually asked 2 questions. I was asked, how do you add 1/2 and 1/3, which I found very strange. And then I was asked to describe what a derivative is. Not how to compute it, but what is a derivative. It was like, huh. Okay, that's very strange. And so I said, oh, it's a rate of change. Barbara, how common is it for HR to do a heavy-handed screening of all applicants before sending them through to the committee? I can't speak to that terribly well because HR in our case is very hands-off. They send us everything and we have to wade through them all, which means even the ones that are complete garbage. Ooh, you have an associate degree in accounting and we said you need to have a master's degree in math, and yet I still have to read this application. Fantastic. let me go to the math club one. Would you say every hire is unique, or are they pretty standard to the process? There's always going to be a little something different with every single school, but generally speaking, the process that I've outlined is generally speaking going to be the way that it is. This may all occur in 1 or 2 meetings, or in some cases it might be 3 or 4 meetings, coming to campus once for an interview, once for a teaching demo, once to meet the administration, and all of that. Let me go back, though, to Kathy's question. It seems that full-time faculty positions are often filled from within, adjuncts that have been teaching at the college already. Kathy, I think that is true in many cases, but not always. I think it's going to be a matter of what there sometimes is a bias towards and a bias against. Being an adjunct can be a wonderful opportunity for the department to get to know you. Absolutely get to know you. And for some people, that's a huge bonus, and for some people, that's a huge negative. I know of people who have been specifically turned down from getting interviews at particular schools, excuse me, because the department knew them and said, if we had never met the person before, they'd get an interview, but we know them and we don't want to work with them. I guess it becomes a matter then if there is hiring from within, to be part of that within and talk with some of those folks, at the different schools, saying, well, what is it that that they're looking for? Certainly sometimes schools want to go outside, if only to get fresh ideas from the outside instead of just coming from within. But it is a tough balance to try to balance out. Well, we do want to promote our own adjuncts because they're great. On the other hand, we also want to get some fresh ideas from the outside, so trying to balance those out. Let's see here, Math Club. What is the most common mistake people made by people who are trying to get hired? Well, if I had to speak to my own bias that I've seen, is that how awful the cover letters are doesn't even get them in the door. When I was hired at Westchester Community College, I was sort of stunned, saying, it's like, wow, they actually gave me an interview and then hired me. And 2 years later, after I'd been through a hiring process myself where I was sitting on the search and screen and I'd read through all these cover letters, I was handed back my original file that I had submitted. And I actually read the cover letter that I'd written, and I said, oh, no wonder I got an interview. My cover letter was fabulous because I actually stuck to what it is that they were asking for, and I related my experience to what it is that they were looking for. And there are so many cover letters that are so generic and don't take into account anything about the school itself, that immediately we said that it's one of those like, okay, this is just a generic one. They're just applying for jobs general. Kathy, how about resumes versus CVs? Is longer better or worse, or depends? Yes, it depends. Of course it depends. Certainly, if everything can be fit on half a page of paper, that's a problem. On the other hand, though, I don't need 12 pages to go through. Resume versus CV, for me, I don't view them as being drastically different for, oh, I want to see a resume, or no, I really want to see a CV. But certainly, if things can be boiled down to 2 or 3 pages, that's probably pretty good. I don't need to hear about every single solitary talk that you've given over the last 30 years. For people who are very, very experienced, pick some highlights in that case. On the other hand, you do want to make sure that you do put in a variety to make sure that you actually do mention a number of different experiences. Suppose your college does not have a great career service center. Oh, that's a good one. Try someone else's career center. Some of the, I would hope that your college that you're working at as an adjunct or full-time looking elsewhere, that they would want people to be able to get jobs. I would hope that their job is to make sure people do get jobs. That's actually very, very important. Okay, so I think I've read through. I don't think I missed any of the questions that were being asked along the way. Is there anything else that people want to ask about? And of course, you do have my email address, so you will be able to get in touch with me.
Okay, well, thanks again, Sean, and thanks again to everyone for participating in today's AMATIC webinar. And if you'd like to support future AMATIC webinars, please consider becoming a member of AMATIC at bit.ly/join-AMATIC. And please remember to like us on Facebook at facebook.com/AMATIC. And recordings of past AMATIC webinars can be found at bit.ly/AMATIC-webinars, and it typically takes us 1 to 2 weeks to produce and upload webinars to this archive. So I'll get on that, and you'll get a link when it's ready in about a week or so. And if you please take 2 minutes to evaluate the webinar content in the presenter today at bit.ly/AMATIC15. And if you need email confirmation of your participation in this webinar, please fill in the optional section at the end of the evaluation. And if you for some reason can't get the survey to work, or you can't enter your email address in there and you still want a certificate, just send me an email, and you should have gotten that in the reminder email as well. And I wanted to address the question about what I left off my CV at one point, and it was a writing job that I had one time, and the college actually told me that they said, well, we would have liked to have known you had past writing experience so that we would have known about your written communication skills. So I guess it depends on every college what they want to see on the CV and what they don't want to see on the CV. So thanks again to Sean, and if you have any other questions, I think that we can leave this running for another minute or two, but at this point I am going to end the recording though.
All right, thank you, John.